The bag lady syndrome is a fear for many women, and it's a reality for others. Two recent studies were mind-boggling, but one shared that 80% of those that are interviewed are worried about running out of money during their retirement. Only 20% felt secure. It would be interesting to learn more about that 20%, as most people, even if they have money, are oftentimes not aware of how much they're going to need or the uncertainties. In fact, I did just an impromptu survey on a couple of different Facebook groups. And one is a group of women that probably has more knowledge on financial planning than the others. And the first one that is more knowledgeable, most of them were like, oh, I feel fine. No, I never worry about money. And then when they started sharing what they were doing, it was terrifying. In fact, me and a few other people were like, ooh, you might want to check with a financial advisor. I mean, they weren't taking into account long-term care. They weren't taking into account what they're going to do when their spouse dies and they no longer have two Social Security payments. So there were all these red flags. And so it was like, even though they said they felt fine, the reality of their situation was one where it could be really problematic if they didn't address certain issues. So again, it's just something that you got to consider and be aware of. Another study shared that people were more concerned about running out of money than dying. I mean, that is just terrifying. Many people are concerned about not having enough money. And the best news of all is there are things you can do about it. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So I'm glad you're here learning about this syndrome so that you don't have to be worrying about money. And instead, you can spend your time doing what you want. So please stay tuned. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, host of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast and founder of the Millionaire Insider. My mission is to help you simplify the money game so you can create a financially secure and fulfilled life without having to have a PhD or spend countless hours on your finances. You're going to learn how to think like a millionaire, stop worrying about money and wondering if your financial house is truly in order, and instead spend your time doing what you love. With over 3 decades advising 7, 8, and even 9-figure millionaires, and now joining that elite group, I'm in a unique position to help you make the best financial choices so you can create a secure financial future and retirement you love. This is the Wealth Inside and Out podcast. If you need help on your next best financial step so that you can secure your financial future in retirement, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Today's free resource is our retirement plan checklist. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/RPC to access it. But this resource provides you an overview of the actions you need to take to avoid the biggest retirement planning mistakes people make. So it's perfect for this episode. It's going to help you stop worrying about money so you can start living life on your terms and, more importantly, retire in the lifestyle in which you want. We share insights that many people don't consider, and this free resource has years of experience from me and the input I have had over the years to see what's worked, what has not worked, so that you make sure you have enough money and you're not going into retirement hoping you have enough money or thinking you have enough. You've got more certainty. MillionaireSeries.com copyrights all materials and intellectual property in this episode. The information we provide is not intended to replace any advisor or specialist or to provide investment, financial, tax, retirement, planning, or healthcare advice. All participants agree to hold Millionaire Series and its affiliates harmless for results achieved or not achieved. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/62. So what you're going to learn today is what is the bag lady syndrome, ways to avoid overspending, what causes it, and then 3 tips to avoid the syndrome so you can stop worrying about money and start spending your time doing what you enjoy. What is the bag lady syndrome? Well, it's basically a term that's used to describe a fear or anxiety, and it's typically among women. It's a concern about becoming destitute or homeless, often in old age. It stems from concerns about financial instability, meaning not having stable finances or having loss of social support, and some circumstances that can lead you to being homeless or not having enough food or even the basic essentials. While the term has come under fire by some, over 70 people search the Googles every month to learn about the bag lady syndrome. So there are plenty of people out there that want to know about it. from what I know in my own research, I think there are more people who are concerned about it than probably are searching it. The problem is that there is an underlying anxiety. Oftentimes, it can have a serious impact on a person's mental health as well as their well-being. And as I said, it impacts women more than men. And it's just basically insecurity about having enough money and enough security. So let's talk about the fear of running out of money. Studies prove that women are more concerned about it than men. In fact, in a 2020 research study done by Transamerica Center, they found that 53% of women in the US were concerned about outliving their savings or not being able to provide their basic essentials for living in retirement, as compared to only 44% of men. But even at 44%, I just cannot imagine like being worried about retirement. Now, I am concerned. And obviously I have probably unrealistic views of being concerned, because if I'm concerned about it, then every single person, 99% of people on the planet should be concerned. But the reality of it is, I think anyone that's in this industry or anyone that sees what happens and how much money you need based on different scenarios needs to be aware of longevity risk and the concern that you may not have enough money. So it's just something to be aware of. Hopefully it doesn't over encompass you, but just being aware of it and making sure you have a plan for it. The issue, just because of what I see on pretty much a daily basis, I think I'm probably more concerned because I think there's a lot of people out there that don't even know they have a problem, and they're going to be in for a very rude awakening. The Employee Benefit Research Institute has consistently shown that women are more likely than men to report anxiety about retirement savings and financial stability later in life. Disparities can be attributed to various factors and includes the gender wage gap, differences in employment patterns, meaning women are more often interrupted due to caregiving, either for children or for parents, longer life expectancies for women. There's also lower participation rates in employer-sponsored retirement plans. And there's just no excuse for that. You've got to be looking at every aspect and taking advantage of it, because when you don't, that's when you're more likely to have a problem. So common reasons why people run out of money, and then we're going to dive into 3 ways to avoid this syndrome. The first thing is you just got to be proactive. Regardless of where you are, start. The best time to start is yesterday. The next best time is today. And I see a lot of times people are like, I should have started 10 years ago. I'm like, no, you need to start today. It's like they look at me. I'm like, forget what you haven't done. Somehow women are so good. We're so good at beating up on ourselves. Like, oh, I should have done that. And we spend so much energy focusing on what we didn't do or should do or all these things. I'm like, no. Just start now. That's all you need to do. And I want to congratulate you. You're listening to this podcast. Some of you are just knocking the socks off. I love to see your comments. You can go over to YouTube and actually comment on the episode. And what I love about a lot of your comments is the fact that you really are implementing what you're learning and taking steps. Now, if you have concerns and you're really nervous, again, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. That's going to give you support on what you should do next. You've got to create and execute your spending plan. And that's basically your budget, but you got to know what's coming in, what's going out, and where can you cut corners if you need to. And then start saving as soon as possible. My favorite saying, the best time to start is yesterday. The next best time is today. Just start. It doesn't matter. Just start. You got to make sure you have an emergency reserve and you only touch it in cases of extreme emergency. And then start investing as soon as you can. You want to maximize your retirement. You want to determine how much you need. And then you got to figure out how you're going to get there. I'm going to be doing an episode coming up on becoming a decamillionaire. That's someone that has a $10 million net worth. The best news of all, as far as becoming a decamillionaire, is it's probably not as hard as you may think. But what I find interesting is the fact that almost everyone that fills out our form, that's their goal, is to have a net worth of 10 million. And it's just so interesting because then you look at what they're doing and you're like, okay, the disconnect is, it's not that you can't become a decamillionaire. It is possible. I can guarantee you that. That said, you got to have a plan and you got to consistently execute. The funny thing about becoming a decamillionaire is it's not that much different in what you do than becoming a millionaire. And I'm going to teach you what I did. Now, I didn't have any goal initially of becoming a decamillionaire. I just thought if I had $1 million, I'd be, God, I just could not even imagine being a millionaire. I just could not imagine. It was so exciting. And the reality of it is if you have a plan and you consistently execute, you're strategic, and you do it whether or not you feel like it, anything's possible. But you got to start. You first of all have to determine how much you need, and then you got to start figuring out how you're going to get it in the different sources. I recommend you start immediately saving in a non-qualified account or even an annuity, but you got to do something. Before investing, I encourage you to check with a qualified investment advisor. I mean, you really need to. If somebody's giving you investment advice and they're not registered, in many states, that's a violation of the law. And it's just not a good situation. Now, because the market hasn't dropped in like 15 years, a lot of people think they can do that. And they've not had a problem because they've not really had any lawsuits or anyone file anything. But wait until people start losing money. You got to be really careful there. You also want to make sure that, especially if you work at a company, you're maxing out your retirement, meaning especially what they match. So if they match 6%, you got to put 6% in. I recommend you do more. I like to see people saving 50% of their income. Now, some of you go, there's no way. Oh, there is. I thought there was no way. In fact, I thought that was the craziest thing I ever heard. How could someone save 50% of their income? There's just no way. And then I started seeing clients do it. And then I started doing it. It is definitely possible. You just got to do it. All right. You got to plan for healthcare costs. Healthcare costs are probably not going to go down. In fact, I've never seen any report that thinks they're going to go down. This also includes planning for long-term care. And the one thing I saw in the informal study I recently did, it was just really a survey, was the fact that so many people are not paying attention to long-term care. And what I love about long-term care, and we're going to do an episode on that too, because there were a lot of questions on that. But I love hybrid plans. I love hybrid plans where you can have a life insurance policy in the event you die and don't need it. Your heirs can get it. This can help supplement your spouse's retirement if they don't have your Social Security. It also can give you income if you need it. And it also can give you long-term care coverage in the event you need it. So it just covers all aspects as compared to a traditional long-term care plan. Now, I'm not making a recommendation on what you should do. Depends on how much money you have. It depends on your concerns. Always check with a qualified advisor. I will say that a traditional plan, you better plan on that premium going up. In fact, I share with you that in a recent situation where we did a combination, we did some traditional and some hybrid, they had to sign off acknowledging that the premiums on the traditional policy were going to rise exponentially. I mean, it was a huge number. I don't even remember what it was. I was so shocked by it, but they know it's going to go up. It has. I've seen clients that have doubled and tripled. So you got to plan for that. Diversify your assets. The interesting thing is that multimillionaires really don't when they're working in their business. They're laser focused on that business. And then after that, they diversify. Now, many of them are diversified in their retirement at work, but not diversified in their assets. I don't recommend that for an average person because, God forbid, you miscalculate and you lose everything. But wealthy people do that. So I just want to put that out on the table. I'm not recommending that, but I just wanted to give you that. But diversifying your assets gives you a hedge if things don't go well. Delaying Social Security until you reach full retirement. The number continues to change. So just search Social Security full retirement and it'll give you the age. And you can just ask for the age. But it keeps changing. So there's no point in my putting it in here because I'm going to give you the wrong number. Then you're going to, wait a minute, you said that. So just go look it up. Consider hiring a money coach if you have money blocks, fear, anxiety, anything that deals with money. Because the problem is if you have anxiety or fear or money stories, it's difficult to be able to do what you need to do to get where you need to get or want to get. You can go to themillionaireinsider.com/support-request to talk to a financial coach. And then consider hiring a financial advisor if you need a financial, retirement, or investment plan. They are qualified and they can help you. Ideally, you may want to consider somebody that's certified. I do think those of us that are certified financial planners have more knowledge. But I think even more important than that is somebody who has been in the trenches and done it. I have been reviewing so many legal documents recently, and it is not my favorite pastime. Now, one of my associates also does, and he's got a lot of experience in it. But I think the one reason I'm so good at it, especially with estate plans, is because now I've lived through that rodeo where I see what happens when someone dies. You got to have that dialed in. And a lot of these attorneys are younger, or they haven't been practicing law. long enough to really see what happens when that trust starts getting used. So you want to make sure you are dialed in there and that you have somebody that is qualified. Consider getting a second job or a part-time job to supplement your income. Even if you're retired, it helps you on the social aspect. And more importantly, it helps to ensure you're not going to end up in the bag lady group. Consider downsizing your living expenses. You may move to a smaller apartment. You may do communal living. You may own the house and have somebody rent it. I could see doing that more than anything. And I would probably do it more for security. I just think it's smarter to have somebody else in the house than just you. I like the idea, if you can afford to, where you own the house. So if you don't like the situation, you can get them out and get somebody else in. But again, you got to look at what works for you and make sure that it works for your situation. I would not want somebody living near me, but like the house we're building, if we ever get this house built, it's like a compound. Somebody living in part of it, you wouldn't even know they're there. So again, you just got to look at it. And I don't know. I wouldn't do it. Very unlikely I'd do it when my husband's living, but if he wasn't living, maybe if I stayed there. So now let's look at 3 insights to avoid the bag lady syndrome. You've got to look at money blocks and money stories, and the list is endless. I'm not good with numbers. I don't do numbers. My partner's better at that. I don't do money. It's kind of like, well, what do you do when you go to the grocery store or you go to lunch and they give you a bill? I mean, it's just unrealistic belief about what it means to do money. It does not have to be that complicated. Putting it on your partner, thinking just because he's good at being a doctor or good at being a CEO that he's good at money, is not often the case. Got to make sure somebody has time and expertise to do it. And I just see so many people, they feel they lack the confidence. So then they just assume their partner, which is oftentimes a man, does it. And it can be disastrous. He may not even be as qualified as you are. So don't do that. Some people share that they ignore finances because it gives them anxiety. But I'm like, what are you going to do when you're in retirement and broke, living in an apartment in an unsafe area where there are cockroaches as your friends, tuna fish and ramen noodles for dinner, public transit with scary people is not fun. You got to be careful what you affirm or continue to repeat. I'm not good with money, because that just gets ingrained into your subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind can't tell the difference between reality and what's imagined. So you got to be really careful. You got to focus on what you want versus what you don't want. Affirming, I am enough. I am financially free. I am financially okay. All of those things are so much better. And then you got to look at emotional payoffs. One of the main reasons a person runs out of money is the little choices they make while they're working or married or with a partner. Those little choices repeated over time have a dramatic impact. Of the people age 65 living in poverty, 75%, almost 75% are women, and they weren't broke or poor when they were working or married. Tells you something. But when you repeat little actions over time, I started investing 35 years ago, $25 a month. I had to watch every penny. And I'm convinced it wasn't where I put the money as much as the discipline. That's why I'm wealthy today. And you can be too. There's no excuse. I was a single parent. I had very few resources. I didn't inherit money. I didn't have money. I wasn't extraordinarily successful or bright or connected. I just did the work. Examples of common emotional payoffs, why we spend money. Spending money because your partner overworks or you get in a fight, so then you go spend money. When you feel that high you get from buying something, making money and spending it has such big emotional payoffs because society rewards it. We feel good, right? Who wants to feel bad? The problem is when we're so focused on feeling good in the moment and we're not looking at enjoying the moment now as well as the future, that is what causes a devastating financial situation. So you got to be really aware of that. And a lot of people just don't realize the havoc that's going to cause their future security. You've got to understand that when you're focused on accumulating wealth, that's very much an intrinsic, an internal reward. You're not going to get it from people out there. In fact, if you start going around and bragging about your net worth, people are like, oh, I can't believe that. I mean, they'd be offended. Whereas if, I just got a raise, or you drive up in this brand new car, or you get a brand new piece of jewelry or a purse. Oh, you get, oh my God, I love that, on and on and on. It's just fascinating how our society is. In fact, Amy, if you're listening, shout out to you. I'm going to be doing an episode on one of her questions is, why can't we celebrate wealth? She just paid off their second home. And she's 40 years old and she's so excited. And she only shared it with me because we were at the club. And she's like, oh my gosh, I can't really share this with a lot of people. Of course you can't because it's bragging, right? Why not? I'm not saying doing it in the way of like, oh, I'm so much better than you. I'm talking about let's celebrate. I want to hear your stories when you pay something off. I want to celebrate you when you hit a milestone, regardless of the size. That's how it starts and that's how it grows. How you feel when someone comments on things you get and you're motivated by that attention you get or the comments, that's what wreaks havoc. So we got to get into where we feel good about ourselves. We love ourselves. We feel good about ourselves. We're doing the best we can do. And I think that it's so easy to be down on ourselves and think we're not enough. I mean, for years, I was so negative to myself. I'm such a perfectionist. And it's like, oh, I expected perfection in everything. And in my job, I really have to have perfection, which just adds to my own perfection issues. But the reality of it is, it's like no one's perfect. And it's abnormal when they're perfect. So don't get caught up in that. All right, keeping up with the Joneses. We live in a society which is so much about being seen. Who's wearing what? How much did it cost? I shared with you that I recently just returned from New York. I stayed at the Equinox, and it's so nice and so expensive. It's one of the nicest hotels in New York City, one of the top 50 in the world. Rarely, especially before I had money, would I have stayed at a place that expensive. But thankfully, I get that. But I could just see so many people that were there, even people eating dinner. And once I started talking with them, because I interviewed about 7 people. So if you're listening, shout out to you. But some of the people I listened to started sharing how, yeah, they're very concerned about running out of money. And I'm like, why are you staying in a place like this? Now, I wasn't paying for it when I stayed, but still I'm thinking in the back of my mind, if I was worried about money, I would not be eating or staying at the Equinox. And so in some ways, I'm really thankful that I've never been attracted to like designer things, but then I never really had the money to do it. And I've always been so much more focused on, I'd rather have $1 million in the bank than $1 million in my driveway in cars. You just got to be aware of it. And you got to focus on what you want. I want to enjoy my life now, but I also want to enjoy my life in the future. And I just want to give you one thought. So in the mornings after I do my hour of yoga and meditation, my husband and I go for a walk. And throughout our neighborhood, there are some jasmine plants. I love the smell of jasmine. And I literally pick a little flower and I could smell that. And I was just thinking, that is like such a high. And I thought, isn't it funny how when you don't have money, you think the highs are going to come from, getting a $10 million net worth or moving into the big house or having the second house or the third house, when in reality, it's something as simple as smelling a flower. Oh my God, it's so funny. So don't get caught up in the need to look like you have money. It's funny because my wealthy friends do not spend money frivolously either. In fact, they're more concerned about having money than wearing designer things. And I was just having this conversation with one of my good friends who's extremely wealthy. And she said, I've just never been into the designer stuff. I'm much more interested in securing my financial future and retirement. And I enjoy my life now. It's just that I'm not caught up in that. The interesting thing is that if you have friends that are caught up in that, and God forbid you don't have the money or you change your habits, oftentimes they won't be your friend. They're especially not going to be your friend when you're living in a roach-infested apartment in an unsafe neighborhood. Get people that are real in your life and really care about you and really want to help you succeed in your life. You're going to be so glad you did. All right, so let's recap the bag lady syndrome and how to avoid it. As I mentioned, it is a real concern for many women. With more knowledge, more focus on funding retirement, continuing to work, and not abdicating your finances, it's going to help you immensely. I encourage you to really go back and review this. Look at money blocks and stories that might be getting in your way. Identify ways in which you can spend less. Determine if you're doing things for an emotional payoff. And then last but not least, so critical, find friends who care about you and your relationship versus what you're wearing or how much it costs. You're going to be so glad you did. I hope you found some value in this. And my number one goal is that as you move forward and start applying these steps, you can have a little more peace, and joy in your life, and less worrying about your financial future. So there you have it. If you love the content of this podcast, please follow and subscribe to our channel so you get notified of episodes, and also give us a 5-star review and share a comment. We really appreciate it. Congratulations on taking another step to create a financially free life you love. If you're not sure about your financial future or that it's in order, or you are ready to stop worrying about money, or possibly the fear of becoming a bag lady, ending up broke in retirement, or you simply are ready to know your financial house is in order so that you can have a bright financial future, please go to themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. And that doesn't stand for non-sufficient funds. It stands for Next Step Finance. It's the next best step of what you need to do so you can avoid an NSF notice in your future. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. The number of women who were not broke or poor while working or married is staggering. The entire mission of the Wealth Inside and Out podcast is to ensure you have the information for you, your family, your friends, anyone who's willing to listen to it and apply it so that you can create a financially free life you love. Again, themillionaireinsider.com/NSF. Until our next episode, take one action that will help you create a financially free life you love. I'm Annette Ba'u, your host. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.